Want to learn how to attach buttons with your machine? Learn how right now with me, Stacy. Welcome to another episode of Sewing with Stacy. Today I'm going to teach you how to put these little guys, buttons, onto your project, not by hand, but with your sewing machine. That's right, no more wasting time with all that hand sewing. Do it right on your machine for a clean, professional look that takes minutes. Let's get into it. To put buttons on by machine, here's some of the tools you'll need. A marking tool, a ruler, your buttons, your button foot, and some snips. In a previous video, I showed you how to use your automatic buttonholer to make buttonholes. Now, we're going to show you how to put the buttons on that match these holes. Once you've slit these open, you can line up your fabric to mark your placement for your buttons. Use a water-soluble pen or pencil, or in my case, today I'm using a Sharpie. I just pull that buttonhole open just a tiny little bit. Make sure everything's lined up the way you want it to be. And I just put a small dot right in the middle of my buttonhole. If I want to, I can always go through and make it a little bit more accentuated so that I know where it is. And then I'm going to put another mark in this one. You don't want to make them too big, because if you're not using water soluble, you don't want it to show outside of your button. This technique works for both 2-hole and 4-hole buttons. It does not work for shank style buttons. Now we're going to set up our machine for sewing. This foot, if it came with your machine, which it should have, is a buttonhole foot. It has little rubber feet here, and it trails off in the back. Drop off your regular presser foot and put it to the side. Again, line up the arm with the bar, drop it down to lock it in place. The little rubber feet are always going to face forward. That is what will help stabilize your button in place. Now, you're going to turn your thread dial, your stitch dial, to zigzag. Your stitch length, you have to turn this all the way to 0. It has to be 0 because you do not actually want any length for stitching. You don't want it to be anything. Your stitch width, depending upon how wide your buttonholes are from each other, kind of depends on your width and does take some small trial and error. Usually, I have found most buttons to be about a 3 in terms of the distance between the holes. Alright, so we have our marked fabric, we have our buttons. What I like to do, how I have mine marked, is that up and down line is going to go right in between the button. So I just have to kind of really just look for it, and there it is. Hold your fabric, and sometimes if the button's thick or the fabric's thick, you might have to raise up just a tiny bit. In this case, I don't. And you can, on this foot, the way it's molded is there is a center line so that you can line up that center line of the button with the foot. And those holes are going to be right in between the 2 little rubber arms. Gently drop your foot down And to get this started, this is what I mean by your stitch width might need some adjustment. I use the flywheel by hand. That is the wheel on the side of your machine. And I hold my threads and I will very slowly drop the needle in, let it go to the other side, and see how nicely that just goes right in. I'll do that a couple times before I use the presser foot. And you can go as fast or slow as you want. And I'll do that, I'll zigzag back and forth maybe 6 to 8 times before I move to the next button. It doesn't have to be excessive because it's a interlocking stitch already. And when you're ready to move on to the next button, all you have to do is lift your presser foot I usually like to give a little bit of thread. Set up your button. And again, I do the first 1, 2 by hand to know that we're not going to break the needle. And then I can use the machine and we have our buttons. So give yourself some thread here, clip it, clip it. Sometimes, now this is an interlocking machine, so these buttons are not going to come out, but sometimes when you, after you wash it, wash your project a couple times or something, a lot of times people have noticed that threads will start coming undone. If you want to give this a quick tie off before you cut your threads, that'll help prevent some of the loops coming out over time. But if you don't, if you just clip this right off, don't be surprised if over time a couple of those threads come loose. Don't worry, again, just clip them off, keep going, those threads are interlocked in there, and then you're good to go. This can be used, this technique can be used on 2-hole buttons or 4-hole buttons. If you have a 4-hole button, all you have to do is put this under, do horizontal, lift up your presser foot, turn it without pulling the thread, and then do the other direction. And then move on to your next button. So here I grabbed a slightly bigger button that has a wider distance between the 2 center holes. And I'll show you how to adjust your stitch width. See how it's lined up here and we're ready to go. We use our flywheel by hand. It goes in hole 1, but right here it is going to go in the 2nd hole, but it's really close. It's really close to hitting that center line, and that's a little bit too close for comfort. That is a possible danger for breaking a needle, which breaking a needle is not the end of the world, but it can be really scary. So all you have to do is go up to your stitch width dial on the top of your machine and just increase the stitch width. Please make sure that your needle is up out of the fabric before you change your stitch width. And then see how much farther over it is. It's not right on top of the center of the button. That's much better. And now you're good to go. So now you have your buttonholes and your buttons. Obviously this has been my demo piece, so I I'm missing a few, but you can see now how we've used this button to create a beautiful buttonhole that it fits right into. Look at how nice that is. Perfectly sized. It really didn't take a ton of effort. It's more, again, about just setting up your machine properly. And as long as you put your markings in the right place on your project, it'll come out exactly as you want it to. Alright, there you go. Buttons done on the machine, saving you tons of time and hand sewing, because nobody wants to sit around and do that. If you need the link to the automatic buttonholer, it's down below, and then you can complete your project. If you want to use any of the tools or fabrics that you see me using, I also have those in the links below. So thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video, because I appreciate you guys and all the time that you've spent here with me. Drop a comment. I'd love to talk to you. I'm Stacy, and I will see you next time between the seams.